I'm on a mission to reach my first 1,000 subscribers, and I need your support. If you love movies, reviews, and great stories, hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey. Thank you. In 2018, a peculiar event occurred in Thailand that garnered attention and support from 17 countries, including China, the US, Japan, and the UK. The story began when 12 boys from a soccer team, along with their coach, went to explore the Tam Luang Cave, the fourth largest cave in Thailand, also known as the Nang Tien Cave. They entered the cave and then mysteriously lost contact. It wasn't until evening, when heavy rains started pouring down, that their families realized something was wrong. The Nang Tien Cave is notorious for its yearly floods. When the concerned relatives rushed to the site, they found only 13 bicycles left scattered around, and the cave entrance was submerged. The calls for the children echoed in the night, but the only response was chilling silence. At 1 a.m., an elite naval rescue team from Thailand arrived at the scene, ready to commence rescue operations. Shortly after, the governor received the notification and hurried to oversee the efforts. Fortunately, a longtime foreign resident provided a map of the cave's interior. Although the cave had a complex structure with narrow passages, some larger chambers offered a faint hope that the children might still be alive. The rescue team quickly assembled personnel and equipment to begin their first exploration into the cave. They sought any traces of the boys while securing ropes to stalagmites to assist with future rescue attempts. By 5 a.m., the team members, equipped with supplies, moved forward with their search. Thoroughly examined but emerged with many injuries. The situation inside the cave was extremely dangerous. One member had nearly lost their life. Despite being thoroughly examined but emerging with numerous injuries, the situation inside the cave was extremely perilous. One member had even come close to losing their life. Yet they had only managed to progress a mere 800 meters out of the total 10 kilometers of the cave. The challenges were beyond imagination. Witnessing the devastating scene of the rescue team and the families of the boys felt like falling into an abyss, as the flame of hope in each person's heart gradually dimmed. On the second day, the situation escalated to a serious level, becoming an international event. Local authorities called for assistance from around the world, and this appeal received a tremendous response from countless volunteers. Among them was a water resource engineer who, upon passing by, noticed volunteers using pumps to remove water from the cave. Despite using the largest pumps available, he knew from his experience that this effort was futile. He proactively approached an elderly man in the village, introduced himself, and shared his thoughts on how to effectively address the water issue in the cave by seeking a water source on the mountain. Guided by the elders, they discovered numerous outlets on the mountain where floodwaters rushed into the cave. The only way to control the water level in the cave was to redirect the flow from the mountain to the base. However, the dilemma was that doing so would undoubtedly flood the rice fields, destroying the entire harvest that the farmers had worked hard for all year. It is truly heartbreaking to learn that the governor has decided to meet directly with the farmers, hoping to find a glimmer of hope for the children who might lose their crops. While I can't guarantee anything, this action may provide them with a chance to survive. The farmers discussed briefly and quickly reached a consensus to agree, as the situation for the children was urgent. By Thursday, the number of rescuers from around the world had grown to 1,000, including 2 cave diving experts from the UK rescue team, Rick Stanton and John Van Tun. They arrived at the scene and immediately put on their gear without taking a break. Their presence significantly altered the dynamics of the entire rescue operation. They reached the third chamber, located 800 meters from the cave entrance, where efforts to pump water out were underway. Yet the water level continued to rise alarmingly. After venturing deeper into the cave, one of the pumps broke down due to overuse, and technicians were struggling to fix it. This was also the last point where they could surface for air. Rick and John donned their fins and submerged into the murky water, which made visibility nearly impossible. The dangers lurking underwater far exceeded their expectations, with sharp rocks everywhere that could injure them at any moment. The risk of severe infection is significant. The terrain is extremely confined. If they happen to get trapped in the quarry, it could cost them their lives. 2 individuals are struggling to move forward, making progress inch by inch while expending a lot of energy. After nearly 4 hours, they finally reach a junction about 1.6 kilometers from the cave entrance. This is the first large chamber where they can avoid the floodwaters. They called out for a long time but did not see any sign of the children, so they had to continue searching for the next chamber. However, just as they set out, the mountainside was hit by the floodwaters, which violently unleashed debris and strong currents, putting them in a precarious situation. Fortunately, with their extensive experience, Rick and Joe managed to escape the danger, but they realized that the path ahead was even more treacherous. Acting carelessly due to exhaustion, they decided to return. The water level was rising rapidly, and when they got back to their starting point, it was almost completely flooded. An engineer who was repairing a pump was stuck on a rock and unable to move. Rick and Joe had to share a diving suit with him to help him out first before returning for the other person. However, cave diving is an extremely challenging task for an ordinary person. As soon as they submerged, the engineer began to show signs of distress, succumbing to intense fear in the dark, confined space, which caused him to gradually lose his composure. Tryon fought desperately to escape. While struggling, Rick wanted to surface, but accidentally dropped his spare breathing tube. As he was coming up, he desperately struggled to escape. Rick wanted to surface while thrashing about, but in the process, he accidentally dropped his spare breathing tube. Just as he was coming up, he hit his head against a rock, causing blood to spread across the water. Rick quickly adjusted his equipment, shoved the breathing tube back into his mouth, and used all his strength to pull him to shore. Ultimately, they managed to survive this perilous situation. Rick and Joe reported the complex underwater situation to the governor to prevent casualties. The governor decided to temporarily halt all rescue operations and warned the two not to enter the cave without his permission. Up to that point, The rescue team had not received any news about the missing individuals. The families began to lose hope, pleading with the government to return their children's bodies intact. In light of the situation, the committee held an emergency meeting to thoroughly discuss the conditions in the cave, including who would enter and when. Everyone agreed that they should wait until the rain stopped and the water was pumped out of the cave before proceeding. However, Rick and Z had a different opinion. As with each passing minute, the children were getting closer to death. The cave diving experts, with 30 years of experience, were the only ones capable of handling this mission. They proposed to initiate the rescue operation immediately. Nevertheless, the governor still decided to wait until the rain ceased, as no one could be held accountable if the volunteers were harmed. Foreigners lost their lives during the rescue efforts on the 8th day. The operation to redirect the water flow has shown some new progress. The first pipe has been successfully installed. Floodwaters have begun to be diverted down the mountain. The rushing water resembled massive columns of ants gradually eroding the hard work of farmers. Then, on the 9th day, a strange event occurred that no one could explain. Legend has it that 300 years ago, a beautiful princess from the Qian Hung Kingdom fell in love with a stable boy. Due to their differing social statuses, the king forbade their love. The couple fled to Changjia, Thailand, and took refuge in a cave. Upon learning of this, the king was furious and sent 13 assassins to hunt them down. While searching for food, the unfortunate young man was discovered and killed. When the princess heard of her lover's death, she was heartbroken and took her own life by withdrawing her hairpin. After her death, her blood turned into a river. Her body became a mountain, and the cave where they lived transformed into the mysterious Tam Wang cave. In this incident, the 13 trapped individuals are believed to be the reincarnations of the 13 assassins from long ago. Even more remarkably, many Thai people dreamt the same strange dream. They saw the princess who died 300 years prior. The princess asked everyone to find a monk named Kruba Bun to meet her, promising that she would grant forgiveness and free the 13 boys in the dream. Kruba Bun Kyum is believed to be the reincarnation of a horse caretaker. Yet no one had ever heard of the name Kruba Bun Kyum before. A restaurant owner posted a search for Kruba Bun Kyum on Facebook with hope. And shortly after, many Thais commented that they had experienced similar dreams. The post spread rapidly, and people actually found a monk named Kruba Bun Kyum. He had even traveled to Thailand after he had been preaching in Myanmar. But just days prior, he had the same dream and immediately set out for Thailand. When people located him, he had arrived at the Thai border exactly as indicated in his dream, just in time for the incident happening in Chiang Rai the next day. Upon arriving in Chiang Rai, he performed a ceremony in front of the cave and then entered alone. After 2 hours, he slowly emerged, and no one knew what had transpired inside. He informed everyone that the divers would soon find the boys, who were safe and would reunite with their families within a day or two. Following that, he held a prayer for the princess right outside the cave and then drove away. Immediately after he left, the heavy rain in Chiang Rai suddenly stopped, and the sky cleared up. On the following day, the rescue operation was resumed, and Rick and John again took on the task of descending into the cave. It took them 4 hours to reach the T-junction, where they connected a new rope to the old one and continued. They discovered the beach shortly after arriving. The Taya is considered to have a high chance of where the children might be hiding, but unfortunately they arrived at the beach not long after exploring. The Taya is believed to be the most likely place where the children might be hiding, but unfortunately, there were no signs of them. At this moment, both gradually realized that 13 people might have died. All right, I will search to the left and see if there are any bodies. The two separated, each going in a different direction, trying to find the remains of the unfortunate ones as quickly as possible. 2 hours passed, and they reached the 9th chamber, which was 2.5 kilometers from the cave entrance. As they emerged from the water, a strong, foul smell hit their noses, and suddenly, a flashlight beam flickered from a distance. A few emaciated figures were slowly approaching them, and when they got a clear look at those figures, both were stunned in disbelief. 12 children and their coach were alive, all safe and sound. For two experts with 30 years of rescue experience like Rick and John, this was truly an unbelievable miracle. Except for their gaunt faces from malnutrition, they were all in good health. It turned out that during their time trapped, the coach had taught the children how to conserve their energy, continuously meditating to ease their fears. The snacks they brought were rationed to just 1 piece a day, and instead of drinking the murky rainwater, they sought out underground springs for clean water. Thanks to this, they had managed to survive until now. Rick struggled to contain his emotions as he recorded the entire scene before him, knowing they had to return to the cave entrance immediately to share this good news with the rescue team. 6 hours later, they returned to the cave entrance. However, on their way back, after careful consideration, both gradually calmed down and instructed after 6 hours, they returned to the cave. However, on the way back, after careful consideration, both gradually calmed down and instructed the temporary staff not to announce the news that the children were still alive. At this moment, everyone had lost their composure due to overwhelming joy. The old men had found the children, and soon this news spread rapidly throughout the rescue site. That evening, the governor came to thank Rick and Joe for their significant contributions. But at that moment, both men wore heavy expressions because getting the children out was far more difficult than finding them. In other words, this was an impossible mission. The governor asserted that he would send the most elite team along with the most advanced equipment to assist in the rescue. However, this suggestion was quickly dismissed by Rick because the issue was not with the divers or the equipment. They had previously rescued an engineer who was trapped in the cave, and even with just a few hundred meters, the fear of being confined in a dark, cramped space had caused that grown man, who could swim, to lose his sanity. Let alone now, they had to face the young children, forcing them to dive over 2,000 meters underwater to get out. It was absurd. After the struggle to find the children, now they had to watch them die. This was something all the rescuers could not accept. The elite team decided to send supplies to the children before Rick and Joe arrived uninvited. They are aware that the road after the T-junction is very dangerous, so they have come to guide on the crucial points to note, with the most important being to conserve oxygen. We will reach them today. 3 members are on their way after 7.5 hours. They have delivered supplies to the 9th chamber where the children are hiding safely, but measurements show that the oxygen levels in the cave have dropped below 20%, putting the children's lives at serious risk. To make matters worse, just as they were preparing to return, they realized that Joe and Rick's warnings were entirely accurate. The reserve oxygen was nearly depleted, sufficient for only 1 person to return. This situation is like adding fuel to the fire since the oxygen in the cave is already scarce. And it also increases the number of people trapped from 13 to 15. On the 12th day, families felt like they were sitting on a pile of coals, their hearts burning with anxiety as they looked into the hopeful eyes of the governor, who had no choice but to make a promise. I assure everyone that the children will return safely. This statement forced him, a man who should have been retired, to bear an immense responsibility in light of the current situation. Eventually, his brain came up with a solution, but it seemed too crazy to speak out loud until Jay recognized what his friend was thinking. What are you thinking? Just a crazy idea. Let's hear it. Rick, a crazy idea is better than giving up. We have no other options left. Harry was located by Dr. Harry Harris. Upon hearing the name Harry, Z immediately guessed Rick's intentions and fell silent. As time passed to the 14th day of the rescue mission, the UK sent 2 more divers to replace John and Rick. They arrived at Chamber 9 carrying a large amount of essential supplies to uplift the spirits of those trapped. They also brought handwritten letters from families. Soon after, Harry, the person everyone had been waiting for, finally showed up. At that moment, Harry was unaware that he would play a crucial role in the entire rescue operation. When Rick mentioned that they needed his specialized medical skills, Harry was taken aback. "I am an anesthesiologist," he said, shaking his head. He understood that doing so would be against the ethical principles of being an anesthesiologist. Moreover, sedating the children and bringing them out of the cave would be akin to putting their lives at risk. Faced with this outrageous plan, Harry found it truly difficult to decide. But the reality was that this was the only way to save the kids. After all, their chances of survival were slim. On the 15th day, a team member went underwater to deliver supplies to the children when, unfortunately, his breathing apparatus became stuck in a crevice, causing a severe oxygen leak. He tried his best to remedy the situation, but ultimately sacrificed himself. This incident put Harry in a predicament. If the rescue operation did not conclude soon, not only would the children lose their lives, but more innocent people might also perish. However, if the option of sedation is used to rescue the children, they would have to endure more than 5 hours submerged underwater. This means they would need continuous sedation throughout the journey. Additionally, there are risks associated with sedation, even if the oxygen mask fits perfectly. Saliva in their mouths could cause them to choke at any moment. There's also the danger of infections from needles and the weight that divers must carry. Each risk could turn the rescue operation into a disaster. And, even under the best circumstances, they might only be able to save 2 or 3 individuals. Harry felt he lacked the confidence to make life and death decisions for 13 people in just a moment's time. Nonetheless, Rick stated that if no action was taken, the only outcome would be recovering 13 bodies. If the children died during the rescue, at least we would know we tried our hardest. That evening, the rescue team secretly discussed that sedation was the only feasible way to bring the trapped individuals out. The governor inquired about the safety of this approach. Harry appeared conflicted, stating he couldn't answer that question since he had never attempted it before. But theoretically, it was possible. If a decision was made to proceed, they needed to brace themselves for potential fatalities. The governor chose to take the risk and ordered that this plan be reported to the minister after discussions. Ultimately, they decided to carry out the sedation plan in secret, without informing anyone else. Parents, please do your best. If we fail, I will take full responsibility. On the 16th day of the rescue mission, Harry took out a syringe and handed one to each diver. Everyone practiced injecting the syringe and then withdrawing it from a bottle of mineral water to control the force while injecting and to prevent the needle from breaking. Harry carefully guided each diver on the important points to consider when administering the medication. And that night, the rescue operation officially began as they prepared to bring the 13 trapped children out in 3 groups amid heartfelt prayers from the public. One by one, the divers entered the water at chamber number 5, located in the middle of the cave. They reviewed the plan one last time together. "All right, I'll be here when the first boy makes it through this long section. I'll swim to report back to you. If this doesn't work, we need to know immediately before attempting to bring any more children out. But if it works, we will continue after all. They are the cargo, and we are just the transporters." While waiting, the divers arrived at chamber number 9, and upon hearing news that someone was coming to rescue them, every child rejoiced. However, unexpectedly, before the rescue operation could even begin, an incident occurred. The coach selected 4 of the lightest children, and the smallest boy named Ty was chosen to go first. But the oxygen mask did not fit his face, so they had to replace it. Another boy dressed in diving gear swallowed a pill. After that, the boy was tightly bound with ropes around his hands and feet. He was confused and anxious next to Harry, who gently reassured him before injecting a syringe into his thigh. "We're here to take you out. All right?" The anesthesia quickly took effect, and the boy gradually drifted off until he was completely unconscious. Only then did Harry carefully put an oxygen mask on him, ensuring it was another boy was wearing diving gear and swallowed a pill. After that, he was tightly bound, with both his hands and feet secured with straps. The boy felt confused and anxious, so he went over to Harry, who gently reassured him before injecting a needle into his thigh. "We're here to get you out." "Okay." The anesthetic quickly took effect, and the boy gradually became drowsy until he was completely unconscious. Only then did Harry carefully place an oxygen mask over his face, ensuring it was airtight. After confirming that his breathing was normal, he secured the boy's arms and legs again and followed the diving line into the water. The underwater transport, spanning 2 kilometers, officially began. Due to the stress, Harry forgot to wait for a signal from Rick in the observation area and hastily administered anesthetic to the second boy. Have you already injected him? However, once the anesthesia process started, there was no turning back. They could only proceed. Fortunately, not long after, Rick surfaced to report that the first boy was safe, indicating that this method was effective. However, the first boy showed signs of waking up after leaving the observation area. The diver in charge immediately stopped to prepare another dose of anesthetic for him, but he had exhausted too much energy, causing his hands to tremble and the syringe to fall into the water. Fortunately, he managed to retrieve the syringe and successfully injected the boy before he fully regained consciousness. At that moment, the second boy, under Z's supervision, also reached the observation point after receiving additional treatment. The anesthesia for the boy led to another unfortunate incident. He stopped breathing. Ro quickly turned the boy over, and fortunately, he started breathing. The anesthesia for the boy led to another incident. He stopped breathing. Ro quickly turned the boy over, and fortunately, he started breathing normally again. We tried again and discovered that the boy would stop breathing whenever he was submerged in water, but would breathe again once he was brought back to the surface. After several attempts, the boy's condition gradually stabilized, and Ro felt as if he had just experienced a thrilling roller coaster ride, almost becoming the first failure. At the same time, the first boy was safely brought out of the cave after 7.5 hours, showing normal signs of life. After 16 days under the escort of the rescue team, the boy was finally able to bask in the sunlight once more. To avoid causing panic for the family, the boy was secretly taken by ambulance, then transferred to a helicopter, and finally brought to the hospital in front of thousands of onlookers. It wasn't until late at night that the first 4 boys were safely brought out. Harry, who bore the heavy responsibility, still didn't dare to leave the cave until the doctor announced that all 4 boys were safe. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. They not only set a precedent in rescue history, but also created a miraculous achievement. Harry's mixed feelings of joy and worry were hard to put into words as he watched the helicopters flying overhead, slowly feeling a glimmer of hope. However, Rick and Joe did not smile because they understood that they had now saved lives. With 4 people, they are seen as heroes. However, if even one person dies among the rest, their reputation will be destroyed and they may even be cursed by society. On the 18th day, the efforts to redirect the floodwaters on the mountain continued without pause due to the high water flow. The number of pipes needed became urgent. An experienced elderly man asked a simple question about the adequacy of the pipes. He then stood up and cut down trees to create more pipes. Thanks to his assistance, the project to redirect the water was finally completed. Just then, a low rumble echoed from the sky as dark clouds gathered, signaling the onset of the rainy season. That evening, the rescue team finally found a suitable mask for the boy, but at the same time, the torrential rain began, preventing anyone from getting any sleep. They couldn't imagine how difficult the rescue would be the next day. On the 3rd day, the rain intensified, turning the rice fields into a sea of water, making the rescue operation more challenging than ever before. Rick declared that if the next steps could not ensure their safety, he would withdraw from the rescue mission. Once inside the cave, the water level had risen about 3 times higher than before, meaning they had to dive further while battling the unpredictable current. The level of danger was hard to predict, and everyone understood the seriousness of the situation as they all looked towards Rick, their leader. The decision to continue descending into the cave is now in his hands. It's probably fine, but it's best that we act quickly. Guys, this is the last rescue attempt and also the most dangerous one. Tonight, they need to put in their full effort to save those still trapped. Making their way to Chamber 9, after several attempts, they found that the mask still wouldn't fit over the tank. But there was no time left to search for another mask. A diver had to fix the mask himself, while the other 3 boys prepared to leave. Conditions underwater were becoming increasingly complicated with strong currents and significantly limited visibility. A young diver named Chris accidentally dropped the tether while pulling the boy to change direction, and the powerful current swept him away further. Ultimately, he lost his sense of direction. Chris had no choice but to try and reach the bottom of the cave to find a suitable anchor point to prevent both himself and the boy from being carried away by the current. Fortunately, he managed to find an electrical wire and followed it to Chamber 4. Luckily, the boy was still okay, but the timing between the sedation injections had been completely disrupted. To ensure the boy's safety, Chris had to stay there and wait for help to arrive. Meanwhile, the mask for Tra was finally repaired, and the boy hurried to put on his diving gear and swallow the sedation pill. After receiving the sedative, Tra also started his journey on the 18th day, with Rick being the second one to go up. The road has found Chris stopping at location B. Chris instructed him to stay still and guard the boy while waiting for Harry to check if the boy was safe. Once confirmed, they would follow Harry's arrangements on the other side. All the other divers took turns entering the water, and by this time, everyone in Chamber 9 had been evacuated. Eventually, Chris waited long enough to see Harry. Even though he was almost mentally exhausted, he still persisted in protecting the boy beside him. After checking, Harry confirmed that the boy was not seriously harmed, but also noticed Chris's fear and self-blame. "Do you need me to take over the remaining route?" Harry asked. "No, I'm fine. Let me handle it. There's a U-shaped curve ahead." "That's fine," Rick said. "Let me manage things. I believe you've already tackled the toughest part. The rest is short. Why not let me do it so I can feel proud of being part of the rescue?" Rick responded. "We must do what's best for the boy. I truly think that's the right approach." With his words, Harry eased Chris's guilt and proposed the best strategy for the remainder of the journey. Although the path ahead was challenging, everyone ultimately returned safely. The Tam Long Cave rescue mission was a resounding success, with all 13 trapped individuals miraculously saved. This moment of joy from saving lives and conquering nature overwhelmed the rescuers. Emotions ran high as they embraced, tears streaming down their faces. Over 5,000 volunteers from various countries came together to accomplish an impossible mission. In the midst of the rescue efforts, they overlooked differences in skin color, nationality, and cultural backgrounds. The joint effort created a remarkable chapter that would not fade from the annals of rescue history. Everyone was immersed in the joy of victory, except for Harry, who, after a brief moment of celebration, quietly sat down in a corner. He had just received the news that his father had passed away, and now he would never have the chance to see him again. On the 19th day, the rescue equipment was gradually dismantled, and each volunteer returned to their home country and families, resuming their normal lives. All the children received timely medical treatment, and their health indicators returned to normal after a short rest. They would reunite with their families and return to normalcy. During this operation, 2 members made the ultimate sacrifice. One was Samon Kunin, who drowned, while the other succumbed to blood infection during the rescue efforts. After the operation concluded, Tam Luang Cave remained completely flooded for 8 months, and farmers affected by the disaster were compensated fairly by the government. The coach and 3 stateless boys received Thai citizenship from the government, while rescuers hailed from 17 countries around the world. The success of this rescue operation, involving over 5,000 people, is likely not a miracle, but rather the great survival instinct of humanity throughout history. It is because of this instinct that humans have continuously managed to rebuild and progress despite countless natural disasters over the past 6 million years. Today's story comes to an end, but the journey of exploring great movies continues. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any exciting upcoming videos. Also, leave a comment sharing your thoughts on the movie. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to create even more quality content. See you in the next video.